The next thing we need to do is we have this nice 3D text in our composition, but it doesn't really look as if it's really there. So we always need is to make sure that the lighting in the scene, in the 3D scene, is comparable to the lighting in the real footage. So here we can easily see that, for instance, for this wall which is standing here, that the shadow is going this way, so the sun basically is pretty low because it's a long shadow and it's coming from over here. So we need to make a light. This light is going to cast shadows, not only on these walls as it is in the real world, but it's also going to cast a shadow on my text layer. So what we need to make is a shadow catcher object onto this wall, and we need to make a light. We can do that in one time. So if you go back again here to the tracked footage, and we need to select our 3D camera tracker in order to see our points again. So I'm going to select a bunch of points onto this wall, and I'm actually going to right click and say create shadow catcher and a light. There we go. So if I now deselect it, what has been created is a shadow catcher object. This shadow catcher object is actually just a simple solid, but with this option in the material options, the accept shadows is put to only. It will not cast shadows on its own. It will only receive shadows and it will accept lights. So that makes it a shadow catcher, or something to receive shadows. The next thing is the light that has been created. The light is now standing right here. In this view, it's hard to see what it really is. It's definitely on the wrong side and it's definitely too low. So the easiest way to position the light is maybe go to the top view. So the 3D layer, it's my first text here. It's living over here. Here is my camera that's moving from here to there, and here is my light. So as the sun has to be somewhere coming from here, it's already a good idea to move it over here. And you will see immediately that there is a shadow being casted. If I go now back to my active camera, I can have a look at it. Okay, and I can say, okay, is this good? Yeah, it may be good, but maybe it's also a little bit too low. So I'm going to move it up a little bit, like this. Or I could go to I think my back view. Okay, there we go. So here's the same situation, and I put it, something like this. If I make my ground plane visible, then here's my ground plane. So this is the ground where my ground text is standing on, and here is my sun being active. I'm gonna rename the light. I'm going to call it sunlight. Okay. Let's have a look back to the active camera. Okay, let's hide the ground and let's have a look. So there's now a shadow being casted over here. But the sun, if I go back to the top view, as you see, the sun is, where is it? It's gone. Sunlight is gone. Maybe if I zoom out. That's often a problem in this 3D space. The dimensions are sometimes becoming very, very big. And now the light is too far out to see by the top view. So that's a bit of a problem. But anyway, I know it lives over there. I can see it there. So I need to put a light in front of here just to make sure that it's also, the text is also lit by the ambient light that's occurring in the scene. So I'm going to layer, new, and I'm going to create a new light. I'm going to create a spotlight, or I could maybe also create an ambient light. Let's do that. Let's create an ambient light with a warm tone, with some value here. Doesn't really matter for now. And I'm going to hit OK. An ambient light is basically a light that is everywhere. So it's not only doesn't really matter where it's positioned. It's just going to, because the light, where is it? I don't see it either. Where is it? I think it's here. This light here. Yeah, it doesn't really matter where it is. It will create light somewhere, everywhere. And what I also want to do is I want to make my text a little more attractive. Now, first of all, this text is not aligned properly to the shadow. You see, the shadow is, it's actually penetrating the shadow here. That's all quite a bit because these rocks are not really flat surface. So there's some rocks higher and some, so basically the catcher, shadow catcher object that I've created here is not really perfectly representing this top of the rock. But it's a visualization. So and my text is my first text, so the Y is coming out. So I'm just gonna move my text up, select my text, just gonna move it up slightly. So the Y is just coming on the shadow here. It still looks like a bit of a flat text, so we could make it 3D text, but I'm just going to show a few tricks to smug this text a little bit up without going into the ray tracer. We can do 3D texts with Cinema 4D in a later tutorial. But now, just very quickly to smug up this text, what I can do is I can select this text here and I can duplicate it. So I can go to Edit, Duplicate, or use the Command D. So I'm going to use Command D here. So we get another text layer, and I'm going to move it slightly to the back. I'm going to move it behind the other text. Just because I think it's going to be nice, I'm going to put a border around this text. So let's go for 20 pixels maybe. Okay. Let's make this border a color of this tint, but slightly darker. So we get something like this. Okay. All right. And let's create another one. So I'm going to Command D and create another one and push that one even further into Z space and maybe darken this a little more. So maybe give this a little slightly even darker background. So you will get some layering here. It still doesn't look the way I want to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put another light in front of this that's going to cast a few shadows on these other layers and see if I can get some nice effect there. So I'm going to create a new light, and that's going to be, for now, it's going to be a spotlight. Let's keep the intensity on 100. We'll see what it does. 100. And there we go. And let's position the light so we go back to the top view. And I want this light to just go here. So I'm going to deselect it. And if I now click here and start dragging, it will go this way. And I can also select the target and put that here on the text. Auto saving again. Back, and let's look again to our active camera and zoom out a little bit, and now we see that this light is not going the right way. It's way too low, so let's go to the back view and let's push it up, deselect it, deselect it and push it up so it's pointing at our text nicely. Go back to the active camera. Okay, it's still way too low, I think. But let's first tweak the parameters a little bit. So I go to my light 2. I'm going to change the intensity, so put it not too bright, and diminish the cone angle. So give it some shading on this thing here. Let's position this down again, so it's really going to here. What you will also see, it's going to cast some very harsh shadows, but it gives some shading on this, and I like this shading quite a bit. but I don't want these shadows here, of course. And those shadows are going to be, basically casted onto the shadow catcher object. So what we can do is we could mask it so that we just only keep this front shadow. So if we do that, we have to go to the shadow catcher. And for the shadow catcher, we would create a quick mask here. Let's go this way. Something like that. And then maybe also select here the front of the rock, because the shadow can't go off the rock. All right. And then we just get rid of the shadow that's being behind there. Just want to go back to the top view for a second here, because the light is coming. I don't like the way the light is just standing there, so I'm gonna reposition, put it a little closer, and maybe get it also a little bit higher, just like that. Okay, go back to my active camera. Okay, and it's this light, I guess. Yeah, it's this light. So let's rename the lights. This is the ambient light, and this I'm going to call the shading light. Okay. First of all, the shadows are way too harsh. This is also a very sharp edge here, so I'm gonna on the shadow catcher, I'm going to the mask that I've just drawn there, hit the F key to feather it slightly, so that will do some like this, and it will get rid of the harsh edge which is living there. And I will go to my sunlight and say that the shadow darkness should be way lower, so that there is a shadow that lives there. I'm also going to make it a little warmer tint because it's sun. And then my shading light, I'm going to play with the cone angle. So I'm gonna play with the cone angle a little bit and feather cone. Just feather the cone slightly so you get some, difference between these outside letters. And let's turn it down a little bit on intensity, maybe. Okay. And now it's a matter of taste, basically. Just gonna move this one a little more to the back. And I'm gonna move this also a little bit more to the back. Okido. So now we get this kind of bit of a 3D text. I think this shading light is still too strong, so I'm gonna diminish it. No, I'm going to diminish my ambient light. That is way too strong. Okay. Okay. And for my first text, I'm gonna give it a slightly, more. I'm going to my saturation value here. I'm going to give it a slightly wider tint. Okay. So now here we go with our first composition. We have the shadows working, we have the light working, and my text is basically standing there. It's still not looking perfectly as I would like. It doesn't really blend in yet, but that's tweaking of the light parameters and so on. So let's have a look here. It looks like so there's my first text.